Okay, you guys, we have Tina Djuretic with us. So, welcome, Tina. I'm so happy to have you join us. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on.
Yes, yes. So, why don't you go ahead and give our listeners just a little bit of a backstory about you, where you're from, and then, what your purpose and intention of sharing your story is today.
Sure. So I'm from Vancouver. I'm a Canadian, and sitting over here on the wet coast in the Pacific Northwest. Very wet this winter. And I have two jobs, I guess. I'm a full-time tour guide, so that's one of the things that I do throughout Canada. I love it. I get to show people, I think, something that's incredibly beautiful and that I'm passionate about. So that's what I do all summer long. And then because it's a seasonal job and I have the winter off, I am a writer and an author in the winter time, something that I picked up about, I guess, end of 2019 is when I first wrote my first book. And
Mm-hmm.
it kind of came about in a really bizarre way, as these things often
Yep.
do. Um, Born of my own um, midlife crisis, I guess, if you'd like to call it that, or spiritual
Mm-hmm.
awakening. Both are true.
Yeah.
And I I had such a difficult breakup with someone I was really in love with, and that aside, what the catalyst was is that this partner made me realize I had a pattern, and that the problem wasn't with men, the problem was with
Mm-hmm.
me. And if I wanted
Mm-hmm.
change, I was clearly not changing, right? Like I was so
Yeah.
aware, and yet I was still attracting only this kind of emotionally unavailable partner.
Mm-hmm.
And so I stopped. Not that I was ever someone who jumped from partner to partner, anyways. I always had long, long bouts of emptiness in between to reflect, to learn, to try to grow, to whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but this time I just went, there's a pattern. Like I can see it now. You're my third major partner. So it takes a
Yeah.
couple of people to realize you have a pattern, right? And then
Right.
to have to define it. Anyways, I didn't have a full definition for it, if you will. But
Mm-hmm.
it propelled me to ask for help.
Yeah.
And that changed my life in big. It was the right thing to do. And I was ready for change, and I was ready to make change in myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of where it all began. And so my first book was a memoir.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
yeah, which I know you read.
Yes, I did. I will say I loved it. I mean, it was almost like reading a fictional story, but you're not reading like a fictional story. And it amazed me, to hear your story, your childhood, and the journey to where you got today and how everything connected and affected you. I mean, I literally told my momo about it. I was like, I read this memoir and it was just so fascinating. Like I don't think I would have ever been able to read anything else like that. So it was beautiful, beautiful story. So tell our listeners what the title of that book is.
It's called Finding My Sovereignty, Memoirs of an Empath, because I am an empath.
Yes,
Or
yes.
what
Yeah.
do people call a
So,
highly sensitive person, I guess, is the
oh
other
yeah, I
word
completely
out
get
there.
that. Yes, I can
Mhm.
definitely relate. I'm a very highly sensitive person. Sometimes I can't stand it because I'm crying in public because without even knowing why, but I either saw something or I felt something of somebody's and then I'm crying. So I
Oh my gosh.
completely get
Can
that.
I give you a real quick fix for that? Just because
Yes.
I've been there, and I've really had to learn to control my empathy. And that doesn't mean I have complete control, but I have tools now that assist me.
Yes,
I'm,
please.
I'm you. I'm out in public. I'm crying, and I don't know why. Watch a
Mhm.
sad anything. Forget it. A dog. Oh my God, those videos on TikTok and stuff of rescuing the dog. I'm bawling. Right? I'm a mess. But there's a couple of strong tools that I learned that have really helped me, and one of them is we're always in control of where we're at. So we get to
Yeah.
say, I choose to switch from feeling to
Mhm.
observing.
Ooh.
That's it.
Ooh,
Immediately,
okay.
it's
Yeah.
going to switch off so
Wow.
that you have control. We don't always want our empathy to go away, right? It's a gift. We have it
Right.
for listen, we're feelers. We do our work through feeling, but
Mhm.
there's times when it's too much.
Yeah.
So, or if you're listening to a girlfriend and they've just had a terrible breakup or a death or something, anything kind of tragedy, and you're listening, but you're also taking it on.
Mm. Yes.
And then when you get home, you're still wearing it and you can't let it
Yeah.
go. And you feel guilty if you're having a good day when you know your friend is suffering, but that's not your
Yeah.
guilt to carry. So the second tool is to say, I switch to feel from again, I choose to switch from feeling to observing, and
Mhm.
this doesn't belong to me. I'm handing
Yeah.
it back to my friend and I'm sending her so much love and light to get through this, but this is
Oh, I
not
love
mine.
that. Yeah.
And I'm giving myself permission to be
Mhm.
happy. That's really important.
Yes.
So just a
Yes,
couple
I
of
love
tools I'll
that.
throw at you.
Yes, I needed that. Thank you. Thank you. And our
Welcome.
listeners are probably going to need that as well. So definitely thank you so much for that.
You're
So I want to
welcome.
start diving into kind of your background, a little bit about your story. So your childhood when you grew up, your parents from your story, they ended up in a cult,
Mm.
which ended up into very intense isolation and very severe physical discipline. So, how did that atmosphere shape your earliest perceptions of love, safety, and how the world outside your home is?
Mm. I would say that for myself, the abuse was always there,
Mhm.
as was the incredibly emotionally and mental manipulation.
Mhm.
For those that haven't read my book, my mother's bipolar, so there was always some mental illness there, and there was always extreme. But when I was 10 years old, and you don't know that other people aren't living the same thing, right? When you're a kid, you think everyone's growing up the way you do. So you don't
Right.
expect anyone else to have anything different. But when I was 10 years old, that's when my parents overnight, and I do mean overnight, because people will question me on this and go, it couldn't have been overnight. And I'm like, have you ever been to an evangelical church? It's
Right.
overnight. They get
Wow.
you on the spot, right? So
Mhm.
they went to this church, and that was it. From that second forward, they were like, oh my God, we've found God. And I don't have anything against church, not at all. I
Mhm.
don't have anything against religion or God at all. But there's a point where fanaticism sets in,
Mhm.
and there is also churches that are not, in my opinion, preaching God's message, which was love.
Yeah.
They are fear mongering, and this was that.
Yeah.
It was fear mongering, but it was also isolation and separation. We went to church
Mhm.
4 times a week, 4 times a week.
Yeah.
We were pulled out of public school and forced, because we didn't want to, go
Mhm.
to church's school as children. So
Yeah.
not only did we have 4 times a week to go to church, I wasn't even going to public school anymore. I was now going to the church school. So that was 5 days a week. And
Yeah.
within every single day, we had a little mini church service. We started every day with this, but also every lesson book that we had, it was really homeschooling, is what it was, because it was all done by yourself
Mm.
in books. They were all geared as well towards Christianity and towards God. So it was complete. The brainwashing was complete.
Yeah.
And so was the isolation. You know,
Yeah.
my father immediately quit his job because he didn't believe in alcohol anymore. So he couldn't be this great maitre d' that he was before. So, and then it
Mhm.
was the 80s. So the crash, the stock market crashes, like it all happened at once, right? Boom, we're declaring bankruptcy. We went from being, I don't know, middle class, although let's say it was borrowed money. I didn't understand this
Mhm.
as a child, to being very poor. So, like, I'm now broke. We're now broke. We're poor kids. We've been pulled out of public school. We're going to church all the time, but also my very physical makeup changed. We weren't allowed to wear pants as girls. We weren't allowed to wear
Mhm.
jewelry or makeup, or we got rid of our television. We weren't allowed to dance. We weren't allowed to do sports. And I was very athletic and I was a dancer. It changed my
Mhm.
world completely. And as far as the discipline went, it gave my parents permission to be even more dogmatic, and it gave them a set of rules for us to follow that were impossible to follow.
Mhm.
And they get, now it wasn't just them losing their temper, God was losing his temper. the church wasn't happy. Like, we couldn't win.
Yeah.
And
It
so
was
it
just
changed.
setting you up for failure.
Yeah. So life
Mhm.
went from bliss as a child. Yes, the abuse was there, but I thought everyone had it, so it didn't, I had a lot of friends. I was very enigmatic. I was always outgoing. I danced, I played sports, I was heavily involved in all kinds of things. I'm sure we didn't have one free second to ourselves as children. And then nothing. You
Yeah.
get to go to church now. That is your life. That is it.
Yeah.
No music, no church, no religion, no music, no friends, no outside anything. It was completely isolated. And I'm pretty sure you asked me a question in there, and I'm not even sure I answered it. I think we just went off on a tangent.
No, oh, it was, I think you answered it was how that atmosphere shaped your perception of
Okay.
love and safety and how that you saw the world outside of your home, but it sounds like you weren't
Mm.
really able to see that after some point because you got cut off from it. You were, you know,
Well, and so, yes, exactly. And so then how that does shape that then is, boy, I had a pretty warped idea of what love was, didn't I? Because
mhm,
just because you have no love in your home doesn't mean you go, as a child, I have no love in my home. You
yeah,
go, this is what love is:
mhm,
control, manipulation. And as a child, I learned that love was walking on eggshells,
yeah,
waiting for the other shoe to drop, and people pleasing.
mhm,
Um, I was the middle child and I was always trying to keep the peace. This is the mantra I learned and carried straight through to my spiritual awakening: keep
mhm.
the peace at all costs. So that's what I
Just
learned
all
about
cost.
love. A very warped version of love, of course,
Mhm,
which of course tells you what kind of partners I attracted later on in life. If my
yeah,
version of love was people pleasing and keeping the peace and walking on eggshells,
mhm,
waiting for the shoe to drop, is where it's not that I thought that that was love, it's that that was comfortable. It's what I knew.
yeah. Yeah. And did you and your sisters feel some sense of guilt? Like, did you think it was maybe your fault that, your parents got into that cult and your childhood ended up turning the direction that it did?
You bet.
Yeah.
Specifically because I know you read my book just from that question. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mhm.
Because, so a little backstory is that my parents weren't religious when I was growing up, in the way that my father was born. He's Serbian, so he was born Greek Orthodox. My mother's
Mhm.
French Canadian. She was born Catholic, although she went to church. She went to
Mhm.
Catholic school. She was Catholic. My father was only born into it, if you will.
Yeah.
But when they got married, they were disowned by both their parents because of
Mhm.
religion.
Yeah.
And so they had no religion until I was 10 years old, because that was their compromise. We just won't go to any church, right? Now, my mother always had a bit of guilt about that because she actually, went to church her whole life, whereas my dad didn't,
Yeah.
because he only went probably at funerals and weddings, or, Christmas Eve or something. I don't know how
Right.
the Orthodox religion works, but um, however, a Sunday school bus came around to our neighborhood when I was probably 8 years old, because I'd say 2 years old. We went to this Sunday school and they knocked on the door of all the local children and said, listen, all these local children come to church. We have all these school buses. We will come to your neighborhood. You don't have to do anything. We'll pick up your
Mhm.
kids in the morning. We'll bring them to church. They'll be with hundreds of other little children, which we were, and we'll bring them back. Wow, that was the perfect compromise for my parents. It wasn't
Yeah.
Orthodox and it wasn't Catholic, so it wasn't either of their birth rights, if you will.
Mhm.
Um, and they got rid of us every Sunday morning for a couple of hours. They loved that, right? It was about
Yeah.
peace and quiet. So for 2 years, we went to this Sunday school as children. We loved it. We did. We thought it was great because all of our friends in the neighborhood went as well. And then
Yeah.
every Christmas and Easter, they would put on a big play. The adults would put on the play, but of course, the children were invited to sing in the choir or whatever. The
Mhm.
big parts were always the adults. But we would beg our parents to come to this play because, of course, we were bribed. We were bribed. Bring your parents, you'll
Yeah.
get a big prize. Bring anyone, you'll get a big prize, but especially your parents, right? Because
Right.
that's what they wanted. The parents,
Mhm.
they knocked on our door every single Saturday and tried to convince my parents to come to church. And we tried to convince them to come to these plays, and it was always no, no, no. And then
Yeah.
one day it was yes. So it was
Yeah.
absolutely us that did it. I mean, that's how we felt. But to be fair, they did knock on our door every single Saturday. So
Yeah.
we weren't alone in trying to convince them.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, we carried that guilt. We always felt that it was our fault. Like they joined this crazy fanatical thing, changed our lives, and we're the ones who asked them to do it. Well, we never asked for
Yeah.
that, did we? We just wanted them to
Right.
come play so we could get a
Yeah.
show.
Yeah.
Be careful
Yeah.
what you wish for.
And today, I know reading your book that towards the very end you finally found healing and started to really heal. Are you finally like have you let go of that guilt finally that wasn't okay. Okay,
I've
great.
let go of a lot of guilt. You know, the first
Okay.
person I had to forgive in my healing journey was myself.
Yep. Yep, it's
My
always us that we have to forgive first.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we do.
Amazing.
We have to let go because it's equal guilt, shame, and blame, right? So it's all these
Yes.
things. So if we can at least let go of that for ourselves, then we can start to move on to someone else and let go of
Yeah.
some of the shame and the guilt with it, along with the forgiveness.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
So you and your sister, you witnessed an event that happened, I believe around the age 12. You don't have to go into details because I know their details are in your book, but
Mm.
can you speak to the lasting psychological and spiritual impact that that had on you at such a young age?
Great question. So, what Camisha's referring to here is that when I was 12 years old, I went through an exorcism. And this one, it's not like they were common, anyways, but generally, this is something that would have happened at church. But this
Mhm.
happened in my home. And I don't know why it happened in my home. I don't remember. I blocked childhood. So there are memories that I have, but the details around them are not great. I'm going to
Yeah.
assume it's because my father was actually studying to become a preacher, to become a pastor, and is along with a couple other young men in the
Mhm.
church. And the pastor was training them and stuff. And I feel like this was maybe a rite of passage to have my
Mm.
father be part of this. And these other young men were there as well. And I know they were all training to be ministers too. But the pastor came over after church, and it wasn't uncommon, right? You know, you don't even have a television, so your social life is after church you have cake and drink coffee and socialize, and you
Yeah.
gossip. Even though it's a sin, that's what you do. That's what they would do. It's gossip. So this particular evening, this man comes over, a young man, I'd say, oh gosh, mid-20s. I mean, I was a child, so I want to say mid-20s is about right. And they suspected he was full of demons. So all of a sudden, in the middle of coffee and tea, whatever, things are being put away, and my mother comes over and says to my, there was three of us at the time, to the youngest daughter, to her, my youngest sister, and says, "You're too young for this. Go to bed right now." And go to sleep, or whatever. But she says to me and my older sister, who's a year older than me, so she would have been 13, I was 12. She
Mhm.
says, we're about to perform an exorcism right now, and it's going to get ugly, and you better pray every second of the moment that this is going on, because when the demons leave that man, they're going to want to go somewhere, and children are an easy target. And then
Mhm.
she walked away, as she does, because that's what she liked to do, drop bombs. Well, my God. We then actually witnessed straight out of the Bible. No one can ever tell me this wasn't real. I really
Yeah.
struggled with this as I got older, trying to convince myself this wasn't real. But I mean, for anyone who knows the Bible, he was foaming at the mouth. He was growling like an animal. He had superhuman strength, and that's what really sealed the deal for me, is that at some point this man ended up on the floor and everybody had their hands on him, and he was literally from the floor able to flick a man at least his size, maybe bigger. I remember seeing him hit the ceiling and then hit the floor. I mean,
Yeah.
superhuman strength.
Mhm.
So, and then of course came the words and the voice, because I'm a sound girl. I hear something, I never forget the sound.
Mhm.
I'm deeply affected by sound. And in multiple voices, when the preacher said, "Who are you?" he said, "I am Legion. We are many." Man, I knew that scripture. I knew that meant more than 1,000 demons could be in there. I mean, it was really
Mhm.
So as a child, were we praying? No, we weren't. We were petrified. It was like watching a car crash. We couldn't
Wow.
leave because we weren't allowed. We couldn't turn away because we were frozen. We were petrified. And for anyone in spiritual circles, you know that fear and hate, they're the lowest vibrations you can have. So my mother wasn't wrong, and she knew exactly what she was doing. My
Mhm.
sisters were paralyzed with fear. When the
Yeah.
demons did leave that man, we were the easy target. We were the only
Mhm.
ones in the room who were scared. And fear is a low vibration, and demons are going to go to a low vibration.
Yeah.
So crazy. So, but I don't know this as a kid, right? I don't even learn this until 5 years ago, right? Like, I mean, about the vibrations. But so, needless to say, it was a, um, a very memorable thing for
Mhm.
both my sister and I. And once I left church at 16, 17, I was just barely 17 when I left home. I then hated God, hated church, hated it all. I came to the middle ground, but for years I hated everything, right? Because of course I was so resentful.
Yeah.
And I didn't believe in that. I didn't believe in God, and I didn't believe in heaven. I didn't even believe in hell, and I don't believe in the demons, and I don't believe in devils. And yet the fear never left me of what I saw that day. I
Yeah.
told myself he was on PCP. That's where the foam came from. Anyone can do multiple voices. I can do it. I went to acting school. I can do multiple voices, right? Superhuman strength. Drugs again, right? You can blame everything on drugs. And yet, I like still checked under the bed before I went to sleep until I was like 40 years old. Who does that? That's
Yeah.
crazy. I was scared of what was in the closet. I
Mhm.
didn't put a light on or anything because I refused to take it to that level, but I definitely lived in fear while telling myself it wasn't real, it didn't happen. In my heart of hearts, I knew it did happen, and I knew what I saw was real. I knew demons were real. So that was a real like, well, that impacted me greatly for a very long time, for
Yeah.
30 years,
Yeah.
almost 40,
Yeah.
40 years. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I kind of I want to skip around a bit because we're already on the topic. So, um, you you actually realized, that exorcism, what happened, those demons actually stayed with you specifically and ended up manifesting itself as physical pain
Hmm.
that you weren't able, the doctors were not able to really like figure out and fix. So I like speak on that because that was so fascinating, all of that tying in full circle, you being where you were to see the healer and then your friend during that time to also help you figure that out. So
Boy, talk about blowing it all wide open. I wasn't able to hide anymore, and there was no more like half beliefs or half truths. This is where spirit, my own soul, was like 1 foot in and 1 foot out isn't going to go anymore. You know,
yeah.
like decide. So when I broke up with that partner, one of the things that it did is it released some childhood memories, and I, even though I couldn't probably put it into words, I did understand that things were surfacing because they wanted to be healed. Because many times in my life I went to, 4 or 5 times in my life I'd go to spiritual teachers. They were a lot harder to find when I was growing up, and I'd
Yeah.
say, should I do hypnosis? Like, should I remember this? And they'd go, nope, no, 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 it's blocked for a reason. What they
Mm,
neglected to tell me is that, yeah, we block our memories for a reason, but as adults, we're actually supposed to go back. Doesn't mean you need
yeah.
hypnosis. I'll still stick with what they said, because you don't need to remember. You don't need to remember every part to heal it. You just need to
Mm,
remember the feelings again, right? So again,
yeah.
but I went to her and I asked the same question. I went to a healer and said, okay, I have a pattern with men. It's clearly not them. I mean, it's a lot them, but it's me. Let's work on me. I can't fix them, but what's going on with me? And so we walked through my childhood because those memories were starting to surface anyways. They clearly wanted to be addressed, and we walked. She's the one who actually walked me through. She's the one who said, like, something happened when you were 12. And I was like, so I couldn't remember. I actually had to call my sister, and she's like, the exorcism. I was like, oh, right, I remembered the exorcism. I just didn't know how old I was when it happened. um
Yeah.
So she helped me to, she used words like the darkness and entities, which was easier to hear
Mhm.
because it was new to me, if you will, like diving really
Yeah.
deep in. Because again, I had one foot in of spirituality for a long time and one foot out, but we were going deep now. And so she talked to me about how demons form in many, many ways. If you're an addict, there's so many ways. And so she was talking about my parents and the darkness that surrounded them, inherited things that come from our ancestors that get passed down
Mhm.
the line in our bloodline. She talked to me all about all of that. And so I was already kind of going, wow, there are a lot of ways to have like have this put into us. Do you know what I mean? Where we're not even
Mhm.
aware of it, where we're allowing it or not allowing it because we just don't know how to block it. And so it was already starting to go through my mind that this was real. So it was first the acknowledgement that it was real
Mhm.
from this lovely teacher that I went to, this channeler. But then I went on a vacation to Bali, where she sent me, by the way. And I met a Reiki person who then said to me, I want to do Reiki on you. And I'm like, no, 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 you're on vacation. And she was insistent. So, and it was all for good reason. Now, she didn't use fluffy words. She called it, what it was, and good or bad, I'm not sure. Like it was such a huge catalyst. It did, but it also did scare me. I'm not going to lie, because she just called them
Yeah.
demons, and I was
Mhm.
like, oh God, demons are real? Like they're not real. And she's like, what do you think darkness is, right? Like, because
Mhm.
she sees them in form, they are
Mhm.
literally hideous to her, whereas a lot of people just see them as darkness. And
Yeah.
she went through my body and was doing a lot of things, but what you're specifically getting to is this lower back pain that I'd had for years. I mean, I had put on 40 pounds. I mean, I fell and I hurt a hip. So I'll start with that. Like there was a catalyst.
Mhm.
I fell and I hurt a hip, but it
Yeah.
went on forever and turned into this insane back pain and lasted 4 years. And everyone kept telling me nothing was wrong with me. And so when I went to see her, I said, please address my back pain. Like this was ruling my life for so many years. And take it or leave it, people. But here's what she said. Here's what she saw, is that she was literally pulling demons out of my lower back, pulling them, hundreds of them.
Mhm.
And that freaked me out. I have to say, I'm okay with that information now, but it
Yeah.
freaked me out when it was new. And I said, what do you mean they've been living in my back? What? I'm a good person, right? Like you start freaking out, right? I'm a good person. And she said, they weren't yours. Like, so she said, during that exorcism is that's when they came. You were afraid. So they went to you. I don't know that it was
Mhm.
just me. I'm not going to say they didn't go to my mother or my father. Just because they weren't
Yeah.
afraid doesn't mean that they weren't dark, right?
Right.
They
Their
were very,
vibrations weren't low.
right?
Mhm.
Everyone in that church had low vibrations, to be fair.
Right.
Um, yeah, or my sisters, but, and also even the baby girl, just because she wasn't in the room doesn't mean the demons couldn't have gone to her. That's not how that works, right? They can go through the
Right.
floor, they can travel anywhere. But at any rate, they were living in my back. And they were the ones causing havoc. Now, she saw them as tentacles of black moving across my lower back, and they were wrapping around my hips, and they were trying to
Mm.
go up the spine. And she said, your inner child has been fighting them off for years, but she's tired, and you need to take control of this now. So she moved them, but now it's my job to keep my vessel clean and give my inner child a break, right? So I've worked on all of that, believe me. But my question was, if they've been in my back all those years, we're talking 30 years, 40 years, why did I only feel it in the last 4 or 5 years? That was my question to her. I mean, aside from the
Yeah.
million questions I had about demons, obviously. But to get to the point, and she said,
Mhm.
think of an old sports injury. You can hurt yourself as a young person and it heals, no problem. I mean, you eventually get over it, but that is going to come back and revisit you in your 40s and 50s. Injuries are
Mm.
permanent, in that way. All athletes and dancers will tell you these injuries come back and they manifest when you're older. And that's what she said happened. The demons came into my body and they were sitting there, but they manifested when I hurt my hip and started dating the last partner, and all this darkness was entering my life. And then it all came to a head when I broke up with him, and everything was
Yeah.
activated. That's how it was
Yeah.
explained. Anyways.
It was like when you finally recognize those patterns. Like I remember reading that part. It was like that moment when it clicked in your brain and you were like, "Oh my god, here's a pattern." And then that pain and then that was like that catalyst for the pain, like that relationship and recognizing those patterns like, "Hey, now you got to figure out where it's coming from and work through that." So, yeah, wow, that's amazing.
Our
So,
bodies are so powerful, right? And they're always
they
trying to talk
are.
to us, but we don't know how to listen. We've forgotten how to listen to our bodies.
Yes.
But they
Yes.
hold the trauma and they hold the pain, and like you said, when I first started dating that guy and I tripped and fell and broke my hip, and for the whole
Mhm.
time we were dating I could barely walk, my
Yeah.
body was literally telling me to slow down, do not jump in with this man. I didn't listen. I
Mhm.
didn't even realize it was a sign.
Yeah. Yeah, I wholeheartedly believe that. Like I heard that sometimes women who experience sexual trauma, they hold a lot of that trauma and the energy from that trauma with like down there and in their hips. So you have to constantly be working through that so you don't have those hip problems anymore. Or if you're in conversation with somebody and just mid sentence you randomly just have a coughing fit. It's like, apparently I'm not supposed to finish the sentence to you. It's not meant to be, like our bodies are telling us, nope, nope, this is your line. Don't cross it. So I wholeheartedly
Absolutely.
believe that our bodies tell us so many things, but I feel like in society we've just been taught to ignore it.
Well, we never slow
Yeah.
down and listen, do we? We live in a
No,
go,
we
go, go,
don't.
do, hustle, hustle, hustle kind of a
Yeah,
world.
always stimulated as well as, music, devices, phone, social media. It's always something. It's never like be able to sit in actual silence in yourself and in your body to figure out what's going on. Things are talking, if your brain's talking, to actually just sit.
And that's your tell
Yep.
right there. If you're afraid to sit alone in your own thoughts, you have
Mm-hmm.
trauma. You're
Yep.
afraid of
Oh
it.
yeah.
You're running from it.
Yep. Yes. Oh my gosh. So during your 20s and 30s, you had a series of toxic relationships, including one with an addict. So,
Mm.
where were the most significant, like, repeating parts that are patterns that you kept repeating? And how did those subconsciously mirror the dynamics that you learned from your parents?
Mm. Well, so the very first person I ever really truly fell in love with didn't love me back. And I
Mm-hmm.
pined over him because we were really good friends. So he was daily in my life. And he knew how I felt about him, even though he pretended he didn't. I'm going to just call that out because, I never knew at the time. I always just put it all on me. But now that I've really, had time to go back and analyze, he knew I loved him and he loved that power. And he loved
Right.
that kept me attached to him. When that ended, and it ended ugly and dramatic because it always does, with me
Mm-hmm.
confessing my love and it wasn't requited and I fell apart and it was so ugly. But I learned from that, and I don't know that I learned necessarily healthy tools, but I was trying. So I
Mm-hmm.
analyzed it afterwards and I went, I will never pine over someone who doesn't love me, like feel the same way ever again. In fact, and then
Right.
here's where the unhealthy tool perhaps came in, is I'll never make the first move again. I'll never confess my
Mm-hmm.
love first again. I'll never put myself out there like that again. Because if he loves me, he'll make the move, and a man's man can do that. This is the story I told
Right.
myself, right? Part good, part bad, right? It wasn't necessarily healthy, but I will never pine over someone who doesn't love me back, and I never did again. Well,
Mm-hmm.
actually, that's even true, but I never took it as far as I took it that one. Unfortunately, okay, and so who was that? Well, that was both my parents. They didn't love
Mm-hmm.
me. They didn't love me at all. But I would say it was my father because this young man was Serbian. It's like my father, right?
Yeah.
I couldn't have possibly, even at the time I knew, I was like, good God, he's my father. Seriously, strong, quiet. Anyways, because love was so withheld from me in that one, the next one was the exact opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Because the next one was the addict
Yeah.
who loved me fiercely, or at least that's what it felt like. And yet, really, I
Mhm.
was third or fourth down the line behind his addiction, behind himself, behind, right? But
Yeah.
for me, it felt like, because I didn't know he was an addict at first, that he fiercely loved me. And that amount of attention from someone who was so incredibly handsome
Mhm.
was an ego boost, but it was also a heart boost. And it was I'd say I was 27 years old, and I'd say for the first time it felt like someone loved me. I knew my
Yeah.
parents didn't love me. I knew this guy that I wanted didn't love me. I knew a series of one night stands, you have in your 20s. None of them even cared that I existed, but this one loved me. So I threw myself in 1,000%, which is the only way I knew how
Yeah.
to do this. I am not a halfway girl, and I wasn't back in those days. I got to feel what love felt like, but then I was severely manipulated by an addict for the next 7 years. And I tried to leave and I tried to escape. And every time I tried to, the co addiction with each other is that he did shower me with love in the in betweens between the using. He was a binge user. So it wasn't a daily
Yeah.
user. He was a binge user. So he'd go 3 months without using, and we'd have this beautiful, blissful life. That's what kept me there. And then it would all turn to shit because that's what's going to
Yeah.
happen if you live with an addict. It was an emotional roller coaster. It was drama, 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 drama. That relationship affected me the most, for sure,
Yeah.
because you change who you are when you're with an addict, especially if your idea is to protect them and help them, which was the whole problem, right? Is my empath wanted to save him. I knew I
Yeah.
couldn't. Nobody was trying to save me, but I was doing all the saving.
Mhm.
I lost myself. I lost all my family when I dated him. I lost all my friends, cut me off when I dated him. And of course, he's a narcissist. So slowly and quietly, separation and isolation slipped in again, didn't it?
Yeah.
Just like the church, right? Like it was in a
Mhm.
different way, but it did happen.
Yeah.
And so when I was so broken and so lost and needed a friend to turn to, there was no one except him.
Mhm.
So my biggest torture was also my only savior. The person who
Yeah.
hurt me the most was also the only person showering me in love. I cannot begin to express the mind fuck that was. Sorry, part of my language. That was such a mind. It took me
Yeah.
years and years and years after dating him to sort myself out because I was huge personality. I was in the theater. I loved to dance. I went back to that after I left
Yeah.
church. Um, I was always the first person to walk into a room and announce myself. When you're dating an addict and your addict is always doing things you're ashamed of, the amount of
Yeah.
shame that I carried, I was now the person that didn't walk into any room, first of all, let alone was I going to walk in and announce myself. And if I did walk in, I now hid in the corner quietly because I didn't want anyone to ask me questions because I'd have to lie.
Yeah.
I'd have to lie
Yeah.
to protect myself and to protect him and to pretend that everything's okay. I did a lot of lying and I
Yeah.
didn't like that.
Yeah.
So it was really, I lost myself completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, in that
Yeah.
relationship.
And then when you finally knew that you needed to take that painful step
Mm.
of putting your foot down and finally being done, how did you wrestle with that, as an empath, as people, because as someone in love, but also who's just dealt with years of this huge fucking roller coaster, like how did that feel for you?
Our breakup was threefold. It just didn't happen easily. So it came threefold too.
Yeah.
I'd send him away and I would try to start healing. Not that I even knew how to do that, but just as you do when you're just flailing. But 6 months later, he'd just show up at my
Yeah.
doorstep from Montreal to Vancouver. Like it's not like it was next door. It was across the country. And he would just show
Yeah.
up and he'd be like, well, we've been writing letters because that's what we were doing in those days again. And it was like, and you say you miss me. It's like, I did say that. I didn't expect you to show up, the next
Yeah.
day. But anyways, one of the biggest moments was when I finally realized that I was dying. I was dying,
Mhm.
because there were many, many moments like that. But when it finally, hit the fan, so to speak, the day I threw him out, uh, it was such an ugly, dramatic scene. My shame over that also stuck with me for a very, very long time, because
Yeah.
I grew up in a household where you do not argue in public. You do not, display your family stuff in public. Not ever.
Mhm.
That's at home. You do that at home. And so sometimes when you're with an addict, they're going to make some dramatic scenes. And I always hated that. And I would always bow out and try and, of course, keep that peace. But this
Yeah.
time it was me. This time it was me. And
Yeah.
although I was at home, I had opened the bedroom window and was throwing his clothes out the window, screaming at the top of his lungs for him to move out. I'd been kicking him out, and he'd disappear for days, and he'd come back and leave and come back and leave and come back. And this was at the end, right? So leave and come back, but he just kept coming back. And
Yeah.
because again, he wasn't even from Vancouver, he had nowhere else to go. And so I was taking that on, and he was using that. He knew how to manipulate my empathy. Oh my God. He was actually
Mhm.
quite spiritual.
Mm.
He had some
Mhm.
knowledge, at least enough to know
Yeah.
how to
Right.
manipulate. But as I'm screaming and throwing things out the window, and hating myself as I'm doing it, and yet I can't stop. It's like I had completely just turned into a different human. Of course, the police eventually knock on the door.
Yeah.
Never in my life if I had the police come to my door, right? Knocking on the door, saying your neighbors have called and complained, what's going on here. And of course, I jumped on it and said, get him out of here, please.
Mhm.
And it was horrible because, of course, he's bawling his eyes out. How could you do
Yeah.
this to me? Please don't do this to me, Tina. Please don't make me leave. They're going to
Mhm.
take me to jail, right? And I was like, are you taking him to jail? They're like, no. I'm like, okay, right? Like, I don't want him to go to jail. He didn't do anything, right? Like, he
Right.
never hit me. He never harmed me. He was never abusive in that way, physically abusive. But when the whole scene, it was seared into my brain, them dragging him down the hallway, and him bawling, saying, please don't do this. Please don't do this. Please, I'm begging you, don't do this. Oh my God. And to have one part of you breaking open because this is killing you, seeing him suffer,
Yeah.
and the other part going, you're going to die if you don't leave this situation.
Yeah.
It is really hard as an empath to allow your feelings to come out first because you're often overruled by someone else's.
Yeah.
So that was probably one moment where I allowed myself to just go, actually, I don't have the capacity for you to be here anyways. Like, I need you to go. But the guilt that I felt in the
Yeah.
middle of winter. So the police officer told me that what they did was they just drove him 2 hours away, dumped him outside, and said, don't go back to her house. That was what they did, right? Which, okay, thank God they didn't put him in jail or anything. But then I had the guilt of, it's the middle of winter. The man I love is
Mhm.
homeless, on drugs. It rains every day in the winter in Vancouver. My guilt was exceptional. And honestly, that broke me even more. But of course, weeks later, he shows up at my door again, and I have to do it again.
Yeah.
Like, there was no end. And I'd love to say that that was the end, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
6 months later, I moved to Cancun with him. Like, what an idiot I am. I was that broken and destroyed and then lonely and lost that this time I wanted him back. Now, of course, he was clean and sober when I went back with him, but I
Mhm.
also went back with a mission of my own in mind this time. He was a very good salesperson and very good at business. And I thought, I'm going to Mexico and I'm starting a business. You're going to help me. And he did, but he blew it up too, because that's what
Yeah.
addicts do. It was never going to go okay. So finally, there, another year in Puerto Vallarta, again, long months where he was gone because I was done. Um, until he got on an airplane and actually left, I was always enjoying my life because I had a really good life in Cancun, but there was always waiting. When's he going to show up at my door? When's he going to show up at my door? I had to call security and same thing and say, don't let this man in the building anymore.
Wow.
It was terrible. And then when it was over,
Yeah.
I went through loneliness and guilt because 2 weeks later he had a new partner.
Mhm.
And that was heartbreaking, devastating to me. And I knew that it was because he couldn't not have another partner. He needed someone to clean up his mess and to,
Yeah.
steal energy from. But at the same time, the fact that I was so easily replaced, and yet I'm glad it's over. So it was I mean, honestly, for a year, it was such a mixture of emotions,
Mhm. Yeah.
but relief that it was over.
Yeah. Good.
But then I had to
Good.
build back from scratch, right?
Right. Literally start all over.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so how when you left that relationship, which was struggle, but finally did it and then finally started over, and then you reconnected with somebody from your past, which led to another relationship down the line, and brought you to that healing moment. But that relationship, I think, I was hopeful as well. I'm a hopeless romantic, so when I
Right.
when I was reading it, I was like, oh, maybe it's the one. And then I was like, oh, of course. But that's how life does it. That's how literally how life is. Literally. So that's what you took me through, that exact roller coaster life took you through in your book. So
Life is
yeah.
like, we ain't
So
learning this lesson, girlfriend. We got to do it again.
exactly. Yes. And
Mm,
I tell people that all the time. Like, if you are constantly going through the same relationships or the same patterns, there's a reason why. You
mm.
need to figure out what that reason is, that you're constantly going through the same cycle, same friendships, relationships, whatever the case may be. There's a reason why. So figure out what the root of that cycle is. So,
Absolutely.
oh
And I'd
yeah.
even
So,
say, if you want to do that, you need to stop dating first. Stop
yes.
dating, pull back, work on you, because energetically, you can only ever attract the same kind of partner that matches your energy, period.
Yes. Yes. Because
And that
I was the same way in the past with
that was so hard
relationships.
for me to understand, right?
Mhm.
You don't get what you want, you get what you are. And
Yeah.
so you go, I'm not a narcissist. What? Right? Like freak out, right? And then it's
Mhm.
like, I don't know. Narcissists are broken.
Mhm.
Differently, but broken. You
Yeah.
are broken. Love match. Right?
Exactly.
Love match right there.
Exactly. I actually remember my cousin asked me, he's like, you attract a lot of broken people. And I was like, I do. And I don't know if it's because I am broken or if it's because I think I can heal them. It was almost like it's the
Same, same.
empath. It's like, yeah, it's like, can I fix them? And then you're have almost like that double-edged sword where you're like, okay, I understand where you're coming from and how you're acting like this or why you may respond this way, but then you're like, but this isn't good for me, and I love you, but this isn't, and it's that double-edged sword of empathizing, and but then you end up hurting yourself in the end because you
Mm,
empathize too much. It's like you said, you need to observe instead of actually like allow yourself to get overwhelmed by somebody else's feelings or the situation around you.
absolutely. And if you feel the need to heal others, because that was always me, fix, 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 fix other people. Never fix yourself, but
Right.
because you don't even know you're broken, but fix, fix, fix everyone else. That is your
Yes.
broken. That is your
Mm-hmm.
broken. So
Oh
when you
yeah.
said, am I choosing them because I'm broken or am I choosing them because of my need to fix them? Those are not separate things, my lovely.
And they're both they're both. Oh yeah.
Your need to fix
So
them is you're broken. Do you see?
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's all connected. Literally
Hmm.
all connected.
Hmm.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So that relationship, how did that dynamic, built on a past foundation, serve as the final catalyst that forced you to finally confront those patterns after decades of repeating it and figuring out, like, asking yourself, why is this happening to me? Why is it always me?
Yeah. Right. What have I done? Why doesn't anyone love me? Even though I might not have had the spiritual answers or even psychological answers, because I never had therapy or any for the first two relationships, I did learn.
Yeah.
Because as I said, I did. If there's one thing I do, I'm a Sagittarius, but I am a Virgo moon. I will
Hmm.
psychoanalyze a situation to death. Women do that, I think, anyways, right? We
Yeah.
psychoanalyze situations. So I did learn
Hmm.
things, And yet I kept repeating the pattern. The thing is, if the first one didn't love me back and I went, yeah, I'll never do that again. And I didn't. Then the next one was an addict and I went, oh, I'll never, ever do that again. And I
Mhm.
haven't. And I can spot an addict a mile away
Yep.
in any kind of addiction. So here I am thinking I'm growing because I am not repeating patterns. That's only because I didn't understand what the pattern was.
Yeah.
Right? So with the third one, then I understood the pattern. Narcissists. And I don't mean the word that people are throwing out and calling every selfish person out there a narcissist. No, narcissism is very specific. And I was
Mhm.
addicted to narcissists because, of
Yeah.
course, narcissists love them an empath. Oh, you want to fix me? Perfect. Right? So the third
Mhm.
one, I had knowledge some. I had the knowledge of what I've learned from those relationships, and I had even some boundaries.
Yeah.
I will never allow someone to treat me like that again. I had boundaries, right? They weren't amazing and they weren't strong, but
Mhm.
I had some for the first time. So when I
Yeah.
started to date him, oof, on the one hand, he was allowed in a lot faster than I might have allowed a stranger in because we knew each other in our 20s and we
Yeah.
were best friends for years. And although we were not lovers, I loved this man as my friend. And then it
Yeah.
exploded and it was ugly and it ended when I started dating the addict. He didn't like
Mhm.
that. And he exploded and confessed that he had always been in love with me and, and I didn't know. I mean, I think I did, to be honest. Like some part of subconscious, you do understand
Yeah.
when someone's in love with you, but you don't want to ruin the friendship, so you don't know, right?
Yeah.
For us to find each other 27 years later, for
Yeah.
me, this was such a love story. I thought I was finally getting my love story right. Oh, it's
Mhm.
finally my turn. I've gone through so much shit and so much tragedy and so much pain, and it's finally my reward. And with this person of all the people, right? Like,
Yeah.
how kismet. It was so romantic. I was taken in by the story for sure, but also by the person. I loved
Right.
this person. And so we started dating. It's so funny because although we both wanted to be cautious and right up front, we both said, listen, he just came out of a marriage for 27 years
Mhm.
and they just divorced like the year before. And I was just cautious, bad relationships. And we put down boundaries with each other. And then we joked about how mature we were, right? Because I'd never done that, never done that.
Mhm.
And then when he would do things to wreck these boundaries, I'd actually say, like, hey, I will not tolerate that. Or when I
Mhm.
thought, oh man, he's drinking a lot and my alarm bells were going off. I dated an addict and I went, oh, I don't
Mhm.
like this. This is too much drinking.
Yeah.
Then he'd stop drinking for a couple weeks and I'd go, oh, an addict can't do that. Like, again, the manipulation was so clever. It doesn't mean he stopped drinking.
Mhm.
It just meant he stopped drinking in front of me. I don't know if he had a
Right.
drink or not. I'm a tour guide. I'm away for days at a time. He could have been boozing it up for all I know, right?
Right.
But one thing is for sure, as much as I wanted this story to work, and I really thought this was the one, I mean, I really, really did for this one,
Mhm.
and I thought my beautiful love story was coming, I made a lot of excuses for his bad behavior because he was a fireman.
Mhm.
He had a lot of PTSD. At least this is
Mhm.
the story I was given, right?
Yeah.
I did a lot of research on PTSD, saw all the symptoms, and went, "Yep, that's what's going on here."
Mhm.
God, that was a clever manipulation. And maybe there is PTSD. I'm not going to take that away from him, but
Right.
it's still clever manipulation because the symptoms were the same as a
Yeah.
narcissist, right? Like just oh my God. But because of that, I really made excuses for a lot of bad behavior while still saying, hey, your bad behavior sucks right now, but don't turn it on me.
Mhm.
There I am also thinking, boy, my boundaries are so strong. I'm so proud of myself. I'm doing so good, right? And then one day it changes.
Mhm.
Something happens. The switch flicks for the bipolar person, which is what he ended up being. Boy, oof,
Yeah.
that was a kick in the teeth, let me tell you. But it was
Mhm.
when he started criticizing me all the time. He started playing mind games. He started manipulating, moving things around the house, doing little things, but I would just laugh
Mhm.
because I'm also not easily, I don't start fights. I don't fight. I don't argue. I was never that person. I was the peacekeeper.
Yeah.
When he kept doing these things and not getting a rise out of me like he wanted to, he'd switch tactics. This must have gone on for a good 3 or 4 months before he just went into criticizing mode. I think it actually just
Yeah.
upset him that he couldn't get any rise out of me now that I look at it in hindsight, right? And so then he just started criticizing, 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 criticizing. And it felt familiar, familiar, familiar. Okay, he had a bad day at work. I'm going to let this go. This isn't worth a
Mhm.
fight. And then sometimes it would be like, hey, you don't get to talk to me like that. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to go to my man cave and just, do that. Okay. So this went on for a long time. But I was so I was so uneasy while this was happening because it was so familiar, and I kept thinking it was familiar because of the addiction. I was really comprehending at this point that he was an alcoholic, and I was like, "Oh my God, what do I do? What do I do?" So one day I sat down and I made a list, and I have never done that with a partner before, and I knew it was
Yeah.
serious. Just the fact that I was making a list. I was in a hotel room on tour away from him. I'd been away for weeks, and I sat down and I made a list of all his positive qualities and all of his negative qualities. Except I started with negative, so I never even actually got to the positive ones, to be honest. I sat down and went, let's go negative because this is bugging me. And as I wrote the list, and no one was there to watch, so I really wrote an honest list. And as I
Mhm.
looked at it, I went, oh my God, you're my mother.
Yeah.
The criticism, the nitpicking, the manipulating, the bad moods. I was like, oh my God, you're bipolar.
Yeah.
That brought me to my knees, Kamisha. I can't even tell you how that to know that I had a lifetime of not just my mother, but friends and partners who were all like this. But he's the first
Yeah.
person who was actually bipolar,
Yeah.
right? So that was such a trigger for me. And I was so angry because I thought, how did I not see this coming?
Mhm.
And that is the question that really sent me then on my spiritual awakening. What is wrong with me that all the signs are there, and I was so busy as an empath and as a woman and just as a partner making excuses for your bad behavior that I never sat
Mhm.
down and analyzed your bad behavior to
Yeah.
make it go, oh my God, you're bipolar. And that brought me to my knees. And then
Yeah.
I started to have memories about childhood because spirit went, finally. And it was like, oh no, you will wake up now. You will wake up.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Now your hip pain, you heard it while you were in that relationship, right?
Right at the
And then
top
it
of it.
just just intensified afterward.
Oh yeah. Really
Yeah.
badly. Yeah. And this was
Oh.
a fight and a point of of soreness with us because something that he was used to nitpick me is because I was always an athlete and I'm in my 50s now, I'm not an athlete, but I was a hiker. I was a take long walks, avid camper, and so was he. And
Mhm.
I couldn't go on those big hikes with him anymore. Not if it went up. As soon as there was an incline, I was done. Well, and in those days, I could barely walk 2 blocks, and I started limping again. And
Yeah.
boy, he really used that against me. This is what I
Yep.
signed up for,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Like,
that angered me. That angered
oh,
me while reading for you. I was like, oh boy. Especially somebody who you knew in your 20s. And then to like, I can only imagine like what you were thinking when literally it was like personality started to flip and you were like, who was this person? Like you've never seen this person before. All of a sudden this, like I was angry for you while reading.
and yet, he was exactly who he was back then.
Yeah, he
Right?
was.
If you
Yeah.
look at how it
The same
ended back
patterns.
then, it was the same
Mhm.
pattern.
Oh,
He
yeah.
actually showed who he was back then. I just didn't see it
Yeah.
because he was so
Yeah.
beautiful and so lovely on the other side, right?
Yeah.
On the other
That's
side
how
of that
that's
spectrum.
exactly how they get you. Exactly how
Mhm.
they get you. So, now as an empath, what does it mean as, like you gave me tools to kind of, start observing. But you who once internalized others' pain and you finally found, a life in sovereignty. So, what does that mean to you now?
Oof, that comes for a lot of things. For me, sovereignty is standing in your power. At least that's how I put
Mhm.
it for my book. I found my sovereignty, I found my power and my self worth and my self love.
Yes.
Learning to heal was many steps, right? So of course I had to learn to heal. I had to go
Mhm.
back and I had to walk through childhood, through journaling, through meditation. I learned yoga. I was writing a memoir, so I was journaling on steroids, really, right? So I was,
Yeah.
because what came out in my book, believe me, the first one had over 1,000 pages because I didn't know what I was doing. I just sat down and went,
Mhm.
right, gotta write about my life. And I just took everything that ever happened and wrote about it. And then at the end you go, God, not even a third of that went into the book. But it wasn't a waste of time,
Yeah.
because the book for me was never just about writing a book. I was healing as I went through it. So I had to go through
Yeah.
all those things that never ended up in the book to heal those things. So healing myself, finding compassion for those that harmed me,
Yeah.
understanding karma,
Mhm.
understanding generational trauma so that I could find the forgiveness again for myself first, but then for
Yeah.
them, putting up boundaries, healthy boundaries. And let me tell you, my boundaries are ironclad now. They've been tested
Yes.
very strongly in the last month. And I'm so proud of myself because I really, thank you. Because it's never easy, right?
No, it's not.
But when you see it coming, you know how to deal with it and you now have the tools. So I learned to find tools to deal with my empath. And I learned that it's not my job to fix other people.
Yeah.
And you can't fix, more importantly, other people. So when I see
Mhm.
someone else is broken now, I'm happy to say to them, here's some tools so you can do some healing, but I won't be doing
Mhm.
it for you. I won't be doing it
Yes.
for you.
Oh yeah.
Right? We can spread the word. We can show how we grew, I'm so at peace now. I can't even tell you how much I'm at peace. My
Mhm.
healing is messy and it's dirty, and it is. And anyone who tells you it isn't is a liar, or they didn't have a lot
Right.
to clean up. But not only do we have stuff to clean up from our lives, we have all this generational stuff and all this ancestral stuff and all this past life stuff. There's a lot to clean up for all of us. But
Yeah.
as we do, I feel lighter. I'm at peace. And the part that a lot of people don't talk about and scares people when they're new, I think sometimes, is that be prepared for your circle of friends to start to drop away. Because you and I
Mhm.
talked about this at the top of the show, that vibrational match, that
Yes.
you're going to attract people that match you. Well, the higher
Mm.
I go in my healing, the more old friends are dropping away, and there's nothing I can do about it. Nor do I guess, I mean,
Mhm.
part of me wants to, because, it's sentimental, and yet
Yeah.
we don't have a lot to talk about anymore either. I'm on this incredible spiritual journey, and they're not. A lot of them think I'm crazy. I don't care. I stand in my truth. I'm not afraid, right? That's
Yes.
sovereignty too. I'm not afraid.
Yes. Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
kind of
That's
funny because
amazing.
the test for me for that was actually putting my name on the book. Because the whole time I
Yeah.
was writing the book, I had zero intention of putting my name on it. I wrote it. My main character's name is Sage, and I wrote the book under Sage. And
Mhm.
my beautiful channeler, she said to me, "Your name's going on the book." I'm like, "No, it's not." She's like, "Okay," because a good healer knows not to push as well. It's not her job to push
Yeah.
me. 6 months
Mhm.
later, your name's going on the book. No, it's not. Okay, right? She didn't argue.
Yeah.
2 years later, oh, I see you're still writing under your pen name. Okay. It was only when I went to finally publish it that she said, you have to put your name on the book. And I said, man, it's not about my name, it's my family and the people
Mhm.
in the book. Yeah, I changed all their names, but once my name's on it, what
Yeah.
was the point of changing all their names, right? And she said to me, how can you tell people to be authentic, drop their masks, stand in their sovereignty? She used my own title against me. If you're not willing to do it yourself and be
Right.
your authentic self, unashamed of what your message is. And I just went, oh, damn you. And that was my name's on the book.
Yes.
So I did. I'm
Yes.
still learning to stand in my sovereignty. Every
Yeah.
time I go
I
on a
will say
podcast, right?
I started to read your book, and we have my wife got me a kitten when we moved in together, and I
Oh,
renamed her Sage. I renamed her Sage because and when
okay.
I read it, I did, and so when I started reading your book, and I was like, oh my gosh, the main character's name is Sage. It was like kismet. Like I don't believe in coincidences. I believe that things happen, for a reason. So it was like
Yeah.
I was meant to read this book. I was meant to have this conversation with you. Like it just all aligned. So yeah, it was awesome. So
I love that.
for those who are currently in the middle of a toxic cycle or dealing with any pain linked to trauma, what is the single most important message or piece of hope you want readers of Finding My Sovereignty to take away?
For those that are suffering, oh God, I truly do know what that feels like. And I think you do too, Kamisha.
Yeah.
It is so hard to see the forest for the trees when you're lost in your overwhelm, but also lost in survival mode.
Mm-hmm.
Survival mode is waiting for the other shoe to drop, walking on eggshells. Even when life is going amazing, you're looking over your shoulder because you know that something bad's going to happen. You know
Yeah.
it. So, my advice is change the knowing. And you can. Oh my God, I am proof of that. Let me
Yeah.
tell you. And it is never too late, but only you can do it. And there's no one shoe fits all either, one size fits all, right? There's
Yeah.
so many beautiful modalities that can be gentle. Even though healing is going to get messy, the more trauma you have, it can still lead you in gently, if I can say that. And anything
Yeah.
that feels overwhelming to you, build a bridge. That's
Yeah.
my message. You don't have to forgive someone who did really heinous things to you right away, but there are 5 or 6 steps that you can take to build a bridge to get you there that are
Yeah.
simple, implementable, daily things that you can do so that it doesn't feel so overwhelming. And I promise you, when you come out the other side, oh my God, not being in survival mode anymore. I'm finally in control of my life. I was not in control of my life. My survival mode was. But for the past
Yeah.
5 years, I'm in control of my life. And that is my
Yes.
sovereignty. And
Yes.
nobody has ever gone to any depth that they can't come back from. So you can
Yes.
too.
Amazing. And so, Tina, I want to thank you so much for coming on and for sharing your story. Where can our listeners find your book and connect with you? And I also believe you are working on a workbook. Is that correct?
I published it a couple months ago. It came out
Okay, awesome.
yeah,
Awesome.
I
Yeah,
got
so
it
talk
put out.
about your workbook.
So the workbook. So when I wrote the memoir, of course, as I'm like you said, it read like fiction, and that was quite intentional as well because I'm a big read. I'm an avid reader, and I read a lot of
Yeah.
fiction. Although I'm starting to read more nonfiction because it's
Yeah.
helpful in my life. But I'm a big reader. So when I wrote my book, I think of it as a case study almost because it really is. It's going to take
Yeah.
you from how the trauma was created to why then I chose these partners because I really do break it down. But
Yeah.
for me, if I'm reading a book like that, it was always going to be like, oh my God, yay, at the end she healed. But I don't tell you how. Like I just sort of give you the first steps of it because the book would have gone on for 5 years. But my question reading a book like that is how? How did you heal? And
Yeah.
that's what prompted the workbook. To be fair, when I was first told you're going to write a book, she also did say, and it's going to be followed by a workbook. And I'm so glad she did because as I was writing my book and trying to learn how to heal, I was broke. COVID had happened. So there's a fluffy floating. That's what I'm grabbing. A little fluffy distraction. And I'm like a cat and distracted. Sorry. Sage, your cat. I just lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, she's as I was writing my book, it was COVID and I was broke and I didn't have a job, and then like all these demons are coming up to haunt me, and I didn't know what
Mhm.
to do, and I didn't know how to get rid of them and what to do, and I had to figure it out on my own. Let me tell you, like the internet saved my life when it came to that. I'm not going to lie, because I'd go to YouTube and
Yeah.
be like, "Oh, spirit, I don't even know what YouTube is, but help!" And then boom, how to heal childhood trauma would come up, and it would be a brilliant message for me. So I took notes the entire time I was going through my writing my memoir of like, this worked for me. Oh my God, this helped me so much. And this helped. I
Mhm.
tried everything and I wrote down what helped and why and tools that I used. Cause like 4 or 5 years later, after the book was all said and done, the memoir and finally getting published, you kind of forget how it was 5 years ago when you first started. So all of those tools went into the workbook. I tried to make it very simplistic because I needed simple
Yeah.
and easy to follow. And it's woo woo. I'm not going to lie. I'm woo woo.
Yeah.
It's woo woo. I only
I'm woo
know woo
woo.
woo.
Mhm.
And if you're
Yep.
not woo woo, take the woo woo out. And I allowed for that in the book as well. You can replace anything with God if that makes you
Yeah.
happy, right? But just get it done. If that's what you need, then do
Mhm.
that. I don't need anyone to be spiritual, but for me, it was just it was just together. So I wrote it together. So the second book is actually called Lost in the Overwhelm. I
Yeah.
can't tell you how much
Yeah.
overwhelmed I felt writing it, which was the irony. Oh, the irony.
Yeah.
Yeah. You doubt yourself,
Awesome.
right? As a teacher, you go, oh, writing a memoir, that was just my story. But now I'm putting myself out there as a teacher. And then you have all this
Yeah.
self doubt, right? So I just had to push through that and push through my own overwhelm. And
Mhm.
yeah. So
Oh
those are
yeah,
both
a
out.
quote.
So you asked where you could find them. Amazon, they're both available on Amazon. If you're
Okay.
in Canada, they're on like Indigo websites. They're not in too many physical stores. Very, very, very few. Like one in Banff, that kind of a thing.
Okay.
So mostly online.
Okay.
On most platforms, you'll be able to find it. And my website, if you'd like to go to my author's website, is called sovereignandsage.com.
Okay. Awesome. And I will include all of that in the show notes just to make it a lot easier for our listeners. But thank you so much for sharing your story today. It was beautiful, and I'm so excited for our listeners to hear it and read your book as well, because I know they're going to pick up your book because yeah. Yeah, that this is just a little snippet. It's like the little trailer before the actual show. So thank you so much, Tina.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so
You're
much.
so you're so welcome.